Hey, this is Dr. Green with Momenta Chiropractic, and today we're going to talk about one of our favorite drills to teach the hip hinge. Now, the reason that we tend to teach this is because we find that patients who experience back pain with exercises like deadlifts or kettlebell swings, things that are very hip hinge dominant, they actually tend to have a difficult time being able to send their hips back without compensating by squatting their hinges, meaning they're using a lot of knee bend. So just right off the bat, the difference between a hip hinge and a squat is the amount of knee bend. So just to give you an example, and you can kind of watch my knees here, a hip hinge is being able to keep a slight bend in the knee and hinge at the hips. So you'll notice that there's not much change in the amount of bend in my knee. A squat, my hips go back, but my knees bend as well. And so it's a multi-joint movement, whereas a hip hinge is mainly focused on the hips. So in order to teach this, it's helpful to have a bench or some sort of box or chair, something where you can kind of place the back of your legs, preferably either the calf or just behind the knee. And that gives you a little bit of feedback as to whether your knees are driving forward and coming away versus staying in contact and being able to hinge your hips back. You can use a dowel for this as well to ensure that you're maintaining a neutral spine, but you don't necessarily need it. Sometimes it's helpful to have just to make sure that you're not rounding and extending through the back instead of hinging at the hips. So to set this up, we're going to back up with our feet about hip width apart. We're going to make sure that the backs of our knees and legs are in contact with that bench. And then the goal is to think about being able to sit our hips straight back without our knees coming away from that bench, where I should feel in that bottom position my hamstrings working, right? So I should feel tension in my hamstrings, and I should feel like my glutes are working in that position too. To get out of this position, I'm going to squeeze my glutes, squeeze my hamstrings, and think about pushing my hips back forward. And that's a proper hip hinge. So one more time, knees stay in contact, hips sit back. I should feel a stretch through my hamstrings. I'm going to push my hips back forward, and my knees stay in contact the whole time. Now, if I'm doing this incorrectly, what we'll find is that the knees come away and my weight shifts forward onto the toes and I squat the hinge versus being able to get my hips back and get my center of gravity back. So this can be a really, really helpful tool in terms of teaching you how to hip hinge correctly, which goes directly into better deadlift technique, better kettlebell swing technique, and ideally helps to take pressure off of your back during those types of movements. So we hope you found this helpful, and if you have any questions, just let us know.